Hello, everyone. My name is Martin Nyanzu. Welcome to the Unsettled podcast, a podcast for those looking for answers. On this episode, I am joined by three amazing young minds. They are going to join me to talk about safe spaces on our university campuses. I have here with me Stephanie Quatson from Rutgers University, New Brunswick campus. She has a bachelor in the Bachelor of Arts from the School of Arts and Science in History and Biology. I also have here with me Daniel Annan from CUNY School of Medicine, Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Sciences, MD candidate of 2026. And I have with me Eunice Cherome. She is a book author. Her book is entitled Ama in Ghana, published in 2022. Eunice is a leader in inclusion and diversity and serves on the Global Communications Lead for Black Employee Network at her job. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Information Technology, Informatics from Rutgers University. Ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to Unsettled Podcasts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you for coming. For everyone joining us, we are going to talk about safe spaces. I hope this will be a safe space for this discussion. I hope you are all doing well.
Yes. Are you?
I'm very settled.
Awesome.
So I'm ready to have this conversation. What is a safe space? Let's start from there. What are safe spaces? Who wants to go first?
I think a safe space is an opportunity for someone to express themselves without being judged or opinionated by their actual opinion. Yeah.
Wow. So avoiding judgment.
Yes.
Any other view?
Yeah, so on college campuses, safe spaces are a place where students can associate or interact with those who are like them, ideologically, racially, sexually, or by any other measure.
Mm-hmm. So, wow.
I think I'm going to kind of hit the ground running here, and I'm going to say that a safe space really is an environment with reinforced walls that prevent you from being unsettled. And that ultimately...
I like that. You use the word unsettled.
Yeah, little play there.
Yeah.
But that will ultimately lead to the inability to cultivate the capacity to learn from others, especially those that disagree with you.
These two said it very well. The only thing I'll add is that safe spaces can be physical. They can be virtual as well. And I think it all goes back to the mind. How is that individual mind feeling in that environment? And also is very well connected to the emotional state of an individual.
So since we're talking about avoiding judgment, ideological sameness, being in a place where people think like you, they won't judge you. Before we get in, I'm just thinking, is the church a safe space? The local church.
To be honest, not always.
I mean, from what safe spaces are on college campuses today, will the local church be considered a safe space or an unsafe space? What are your thoughts?
That's a great question.
Yeah, very good.
Shall I start?
Please.
If I'm being honest, I think scripturally, the church is supposed to be a safe space. By design, it is. And if all the principles are enacted on and met, the church should be a safe space. But at times, the issue becomes the human individual. At times, we get it wrong. And so I'll say at times, certain churches, at times it's not a safe environment to express yourself or be yourself. Oftentimes you kind of, I'll just say it's not always.
It's not always.
It's not always.
Yeah, I think the church is a place where those who are lost should be able to be found. And oftentimes there are churches where if you are not already found and you don't come correct, then it's very hard for you to be accepted by those in the church or by the church culture. And if it isn't the church that you are being corrected or accepted and then redirected onto the right path, then where else could you be? So it's definitely a inner conflict. Like Eunice said, it should be, and we hope that, we are doing it correctly, but we do tend to get it wrong because of pride, sometimes even passion, just being overzealous for the Lord and being so judgmental of others who are not living according to the word of God. And it's hard for you to address them correctly or, I would say even be humble a little bit to help them to understand where they're going wrong and how they can do better and live better lives. But yeah, there's definitely some work that needs to be done across the board.
I asked the question because, all that you guys have said is true. As long as the church remains a human institution, you're going to find some limitations, okay? It's only when we go to heaven that we have a perfected institution, any gathering that is perfect. I asked the question about the church being a safe space because if we look at the ideology of safe spaces created on university campuses for the most part, it is saying that we need a place that is bias-free. So I could say that I'm a transgender person and I need a space where people who agree with me are there and they can affirm. So that's a safe space. But if you came to the church, well, it depends on which church you go to. If the church is not gender affirming, then that place becomes an unsafe space. So in that sense, for the most part, the church becomes an unsafe space because what the Bible teaches will contradict what safe spaces are supposed to have. Okay? So the church will tell you don't steal. So if you're a kleptomaniac, you want to steal, you say the church's teachings are oppressive. It's oppressing, it's an oppressive ideology. So you don't find the church a safe space because they don't affirm what you do. People go to safe spaces because they want to avoid criticisms. But you're going to find it in the church. The gospel is offensive. So then the church becomes an unsafe space in that regard. People who do go to, safe spaces are saying that we don't want any conflict here. It's a conflict-free zone. That's why we come here. Now, when you go to university campuses, this is becoming big. I want you guys to talk about it. Any experiences? Have you heard of anything? What do you know about safe spaces? Anybody?
I can start.
Yeah.
So I think I began college 2015. Like 2015? Yes, 2015. And it was my first time encountering the word safe space. Back when I was in high school, that word was not part of my vocabulary. It was also my first time where I had encountered words like inclusion. I had also, when I was at Rutgers, I was also part of a women's college within the university. And all the women on campus had to take a class where it taught you about gender and all of these sorts of things. So my freshman year, I was encountering a lot of these ideas for the first time. So from what I got to understand what a safe space was, it honestly could be anything, but a lot of it had to do with gender, race, ideology. So example, like especially the student campus, the student centers, they were places where all students were made to feel comfortable. We had certain places for the Black students. Example, our Rutgers, we had a center called the Paul Robeson Student Center. Yeah, Paul Robeson Student Center, where it was a safe space for Black students, Afro students, Latinx students, where they can come and just find commonality. So I would say on campus, it's where I began to encounter this word.
Wow. All right, everybody's running to a safe space. Well, anybody with any other contribution on safe spaces? You mentioned 2015, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually in 2015, Brown University offered a safe space. And I have a list of universities with safe spaces. I'm going to mention a few of them so that we know where our kids are going to and what it means for them to have safe spaces on these campuses and what the safe spaces are doing for us. Safe space is also another form of a religious site in terms of talking about new forms of religion, right? Because for some universities, especially Brown, if you go to a safe space on some of these campuses, they have some kind of jazz, soothing music playing, some cool music to feed your emotions. And people have gathered there who share the same sentiment you have. So when you come, they just kind of console you. It will be all right. Yeah, it's just spiritual in a sense. It's a religious place. When you enter safe spaces, you've entered a sacred zone. So people quit churches and go to these places. Or students who are, let's say, from Christian homes, right? They leave home, they go to school, they come back, they don't want to come back to the church any longer. But when they go to school and something happens, they will go to a safe space to find comfort, solace, meaning, connectedness, community. So they are still religious in a sense, but without some kind of divine power. In 2015, Brown University offered a safe space following a controversial on-site debate over campus sexual assault between one feminist, Jessica Valenti, and a libertarian, Wendy McElroy. And what eventually happened was that anyone who was triggered by that debate was welcome to seek solace in this safe space. And that safe space featured coloring books, pillows, soothing items, so you can come and even spend some hours instead of going to your dorm because people there are unsafe, their ideas are oppressive. You come to this safe space. And anyone who listened to this debate or this kind of exchange of ideologies who was triggered or offended will go to that very place. And when you go to places that have these safe spaces, they have a sign there. If you felt offended by this gathering or this teaching, you are welcome to this safe space. And a lot of the university campuses around the nation have places like that. And some of our children could be going to these safe spaces because they hold a certain idea that somebody has challenged it. And because the idea has been challenged, they need to go to a safe space like a church where people can affirm them. They will feel good and they send them back. Any thoughts running through you guys' mind before I run through this list?
Yeah, I was going to add that this just sounds like people's emotions being cozied up and not really addressing the actual root of the problem that seems to be happening. Like someone can say something and you can be offended, but that doesn't mean all this. Let me not be insensitive, but just for lack of a better statement, because you felt triggered or felt offended or felt some type of way, then everyone should shower you with care, love, attention. Meanwhile, the truth was never even given to you, but you're more so being cozied by your emotions. And it's just emotion based from what I'm hearing for this safe space. Because anyone can tell you the truth, but you can agree to disagree. Like, hey, I don't agree with what's being said. But it's another thing to feel some type of way because someone's telling you the truth. And then, okay, because I don't like what you're saying, then I'm triggered or then I feel uncomfortable, et cetera, and so forth.
Let me ask you guys a question. What's going to happen if somebody goes to a university, right, that has a safe space and they use the safe space? You're going to go to your program for how many years? 6 years?
7.
So let's say that every year you went to the safe space multiple times a year for 7 years. That's your reality on campus. When you come to the real world, how's it going to be like for you? Do we have safe spaces in the real world? If there's not, how's that going to play out for you?
It's going to be very tough. The world in itself is already very tough, very cutthroat. And I think, partially our school systems are to blame for that. A lot of high schools, or public high schools rather, growing up, we don't really prepare us for college in terms of curriculum or just lifestyle in general, adulthood in general. And when you get to college, that is really a firsthand look of the type of world that we're going to be living in and working in and everyday life in. And in this world, we meet people of different walks, different beliefs, different backgrounds, ideas, and all of that. And college is our first exposure of, a mini melting pot rather, where we see all these ideas blend. And if in this space we are not, developing ourselves to be able to embrace these ideas, whether we agree or disagree, and be able to move on from it, then it's going to be very hard to make our way in the world or have, firm footing, because in the real world, there is no coddling. We may have the acceptance of your family at home, but at work, at school, wherever it is you find yourself in the professional setting, there is no real world. In reality, people don't care about you or what you think. And that's just the hard truth. So if you don't have, the firm mindset to believe in what you believe, and whether you disagree or not, people are offended. The truth is offensive in itself. Like was said earlier, the gospel is offensive in itself. It doesn't matter. There's not everything that you're going to agree on, because again, perspective and perception is not truth, but you have to be able to understand and move on. And I believe that if people are being chastised for speaking their own truth, and people who are offended by those same truths are being placed in safe spaces where they are coddled, then it's a disservice to both parties. People who want to speak their truth, and even if their truth is not something offensive, then it's like, how can I express myself and what I believe, and how can I have civil conversations with other like-minded and different-minded people to learn different perspectives of the world? Once upon a time, an educated individual was seen as someone who was well-versed in all topics of all cultures and all different types of literature. So if I only know everything about, American history and everything USA, but I have no idea about anything else in the world, then I am very narrow-minded. I have little exposure to everything. But it's places like college, like university campuses, where we meet different people. And it's not even just on campus, in classroom settings. And, to move away from safe spaces a little bit, we have things now such as trigger warnings, where professors are now having to place warnings on the type of discussions that they'll have in class, because some people are offended by it. If we're doing all of these little stop signs and pauses on things that are quote unquote offensive, then it's truly a disservice to everyone, those who are offended and those who are just trying to not even speak a truth, but just educate, really.
Right. Even just to piggyback off of what you're saying, I remember distinctively, I don't remember the speaker that was invited to basically share his opinions, his thoughts. But once word got out that this certain speaker was coming to Rutgers, people literally rallied together, like, this person is this, that, we can't allow him in our school. And they literally petitioned for him to not even step foot in our campus, just because people felt triggered, threatened, uncomfortable. Meanwhile, this person could have even shared something that we could have benefited from, but because everyone's opinionated or know the information about him that could personally hurt that individual because of the beliefs he has. Yes, he may have been a communist. Yes, he may have been homophobic, but there are certain things that we would never get by canceling him or isolating him out, because there are people just like him outside of school that we would have to face on head on, and we won't have a safe space to run to when we really deal with someone that's literally could be our coworker that's fully against everything that we believe in. But with these safe spaces, we're not given the opportunity to actually deal with the real world, whereas that person could be your, like I said, your coworker, your next door neighbor that you would experience in the real life. So yeah.
If I may jump in here, I want to go back to the example that you first gave us from Brown. I hadn't been meaning to jump in, but I think of the example that you have given. I think safe spaces are, especially in the context of universities, they're doing the work of community. They're an attempt to do the work of community, or work that should be learned within the family unit. Universities are attempting to create spaces of learning and values, but that's not the job of the university. In the instance of this, student who unfortunately got sexually harassed on campus, I can understand the attempt to create a space for her where she can talk to someone, and she can express her opinions or thoughts as to, the traumatic event that she went through. But unfortunately, universities, that's not their job to attempt to raise that individual and push them into adulthood. So I think when it comes to safe spaces, I can understand where they can be limiting, but I will say that I understand the attempt, but it's not, I don't think it's the best strategy to really build communities, because wherever you go in this life, you're going to find people that come from families, people that have certain ideologies. And I think oftentimes these spaces, it's an attempt to, foster that environment when these things should have been learned within the family. How do you navigate trauma? Mm-hmm. How do you navigate conflict? How do you navigate opposing ideas? At times, I think the family isn't doing a good job, and people are just helpless when they come onto campus. And then they're told, okay, now that you've left campus, you're out here in the real world, mm-hmm. but they have not been well equipped.
Yeah, I just want to add on, I think family is definitely a very important, like everything in life, everything starts at home. Character development, all of that starts at home. But I also disagree with how safe spaces are gone about, in the sense where the individuals that are usually found in safe spaces, when they want to speak out against something, they usually take violent measures in forms of riots and call invited speakers bigots and all of these things. I don't necessarily understand how violence, again, being violent towards an opinion that you are not necessarily fond of, is making any change at all.
Or making you safe.
Rather. Now, if we're talking about safe spaces for, physical, because, it's a scary world and there are rape victims and assault victims and all of that, then that's completely understandable. Safe space with security, if you're walking on campus late at night and you feel like you're being followed, so you go to this place, cool. But when you have a safe space for intellectual safety or emotional safety, then the conversation begins to change. And it's like, to what end do we go to really protect, your individual belief? Because at the end of the day, everyone is coming from a different side. No two people are alike. Even those who are of the same mind have opposing views. So if this is not the place where one can learn to deal with this, and like you said, it's not the university's job. You know what I'm saying? University is really where you are an adult. If you don't go to school, if you don't do your work, the teachers don't call your parents at home. Like, if you stop paying your tuition, there's no notification. You just get dropped. Everything is really on the
very hardcore.
Yes, it's real. It's very real, and it happens very fast. And we're forced to assimilate to that, unfortunately. But it's also very necessary, because if we don't, then in this world we will fail as individuals to really grow as a whole.
Okay, I want us to take a quick break. We'll come back, and then I want us to talk about the university setup itself. Why do we have universities? What do we go there to do? I think you were touching on it briefly in your talks and stuff like that. But I believe if we have an idea of what the university system is, we may not want to have a safe space in a university, because it's self-defeating. All right, so let's take a break. We'll come back to our discussion.
Our culture is shaped in part on college campuses. It is the place where some young Christians go to get extremely unsettled in their faith journey. There are numerous worldviews on our campuses competing with the Christian worldview. There are college professors who provoke students and make them feel intellectually assaulted with regards to matters of faith. Real Answers is our answer to this problem. If you are a college student leader, you can go to our website, liveunsettled.org/program, and book us today, or email us at info@liveunsettled.org. We cover topics from the various competing worldviews that unsettle the minds of your students. There will always be a Q&A session after each presentation to model before your students in real time how they can graciously defend their faith in a hostile and confused culture. We are looking forward to your invitation for an event in person or virtually. Any good argument has to stand a simple test. Does it measure up? Does the idea hold any weight, or does it blow away with the slightest breeze? Measure Up helps students at the local church to develop a well-formed faith that stands the test of time and every challenge the ages may throw at it. If your local church would like to host a Measure Up training event, you can book us by going to our website, liveunsettled.org/programs, or you can email us at info@liveunsettled.org. We can train your local church on how to graciously handle tough and soft questions ranging from apologetics, theology, biblical interpretation, gender issues, truth, and philosophy, all grounded in biblical worldview. Our goal is to walk side by side with the local church to bridge the gap between faith and doubt. You can book us today.
Okay, we are welcome back. You are listening to the Unsettled podcast. This is Martin Nyanzu. I have here with me Daniel, I have Stephanie, and I have Eunice. We have been talking about safe spaces on university campuses. We've realized that safe spaces on these campuses are not necessarily to make us physically safe, but the idea is about intellectual safety, that we want to be safe from a certain ideology that we think is oppressive. So we will go to a physical space and have people who bear the same ideology with us to affirm us so we can be safe. So it has nothing to do with physical safety, but everything to do with ideological safety. Now, why do we go to university to be ideologically safe if we are going to a university? From your experiences, all of you have been to the university system here in America. Share with us, what were your experiences? What happens on university campuses in terms of sharing of ideas and learning and debating and countering thoughts and stuff like that? Eunice.
Sure. So I think, one, it depends on what type of university that you went to. So I went to a public university, Rutgers, one of the largest universities here in the U.S., but it's quite different. Let's say had I gone to LSU or Alabama State University, or even had I gone to an Ivy League, the ideology, ways of thinking, and then also the social connections is quite different when you compare university to university. So my Rutgers experience in many ways is completely different to a Princeton experience compared to an LSU experience because of some of the ideologies that are pushed. My personal experience when it came to learning and education, I had a great time learning there. I was exposed to so many ideas on the academic sense, and then also how I personally had structured my degree, my concentrations. I was exposed to a lot of knowledge from different sources. So I personally enjoyed my learning experience. I think where a lot of my learning also came from was in non-formal environments. So example, interacting with students, being part of student organizations where I got to learn from a different perspective through conversations, activities, events, with also an informal way of learning. So for me, my overall, college experience, it was good on the formal education. I was really exposed to different ways of thinking. But I think when you left the classroom, that's when you saw a lot of siloed opinions when it came to students. That's when I think the diversity and inclusion branch of the university, they had, their particular agenda that is quite different from academics. And so I got to see all these difference of agendas happening at the same time. The academic agenda, the diversity agenda, and the individual student who has their own community and ways of thinking. At Rutgers, we put ourselves in different communities. You'll find we'll call ourselves African Rutgers or the Black Rutgers or Spanish Rutgers. And these certain communities had certain ways of thinking. So I think I personally saw a lot of ideologies and agendas at play at the same time. But then again, because I went to a public university, the institutional agenda is quite different if you compare it to an Ivy League or a community college. I think that's where we can contextualize this a bit more.
Yeah, that's true because some schools are liberal, some are conservative. So if a school is a liberal school, anything goes with them. But for most conservative universities, most of them are based on Christian principles, right? So, for example, if you are a graduate from, let's say, Regent University in Virginia, that's a Christian university. If you graduate from there with whatever degree you have, you probably couldn't teach at a school like Rutgers or maybe Cornell or any of the Ivy Leagues because they are so liberal now. So what they are going to say is that you are coming from Regent, a Christian school with some ideology. So if you come to Cornell or Harvard that is liberal, you are going to put conservative ideas to our students so we can hire you. So that's why we have discrimination. So the very thing that America has fought and shed blood to preserve, so we will not have discrimination in our institutions, they are now at play on these campuses because of safe spaces. So if a conservative professor, or even you may even not be a conservative professor, just that you had your degree from a conservative institution makes you tagged or you stigmatized. When you come to Rutgers or Cornell, they will find a way to kick you out. Or they may not hire you because you are a conservative professor. So all these things are playing out, and our children must know these things. Our parents must know. So if you are listening to us, before you go to any school, make sure you've done your research. Don't just get into a PhD or get into a master's or get into a bachelor's just because this is the school I want. Find out if the school is a liberal leaning or conservative leaning. Because these things have implications when it comes to safe spaces. Now we're talking about confronting different ideologies on university campuses. Were you guys involved in discussions in your classes, peer-reviewed work, anything like that? Because if you want to be safe, if you engage in peer-reviewed work, there's nothing like safety in ideology. Somebody have to critique your work, dissertations, thesis. You guys share your experiences with us, the two of you.
So there is this group. It was more so of a discussion that I want to highlight on. I was part of this group and on campus, and it was on Black Men's Collective. And I, even from this perspective, I can say that it was a safe space for African-American men, not just African-American men, all men of color, to just come in and actually talk about issues they were dealing with on campus, off campus, outside of school, all of these things. So different topics of discussion were brought for us to all be aware of. And then also just share our personal opinions, because we were in a predominantly white school. So this was probably one of the only times we can actually speak our minds and not be looked a certain way or judged in a particular manner. So there were discussions for people to fully express themselves as far as the individual is concerned. And they did exist and they did happen within my time in school as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so I remember my freshman year, I have quite a few experiences, but I remember my freshman year, there was on campus, in front of the main building, there was a guy standing on a wooden box, and he was debating abortion with a crowd of people. And videos that we've seen on social media and everything, the people in the crowd are always kind of very aggressive in their opinion and doing a lot of yelling without really saying anything. And the orator was actually very well spoken and was using a lot of scripture. And I was standing there for at least an hour just listening to him debunk a lot of ideas without even doing much talking, but rather just deflecting questions back to the individual and having them express their ideas. And, of course, there were people who were, put to shambles, but there were also good conversations that were held in the process as well. Now I'm a science major. I was a science major. Now I'm a med student, but we didn't really have those type of ideological discussions in class. It was really just like science.
You know why? You know why? Because in science, if let's say, well, 1 + 1 is 2, there's no debate.
Yeah, no debate.
Yeah.
If you don't take your medicine, you die. There's no debate. Stuff like that. You are a science major, so you have very good examples than I would have. But my point is, when certain things are rooted in fact and truth, there's nothing like a debate about it.
Yeah.
Right.
My point is this. For safe spaces, the whole premise and foundation of it is that I want to be ideologically protected because somebody's idea is oppressive to me. But that defeats the point of going to a university.
Yeah.
Now, the idea of starting universities is that we are diverse. So let's become united in our diversity. So uni means being united. Versity means diverse. So we have different opinions, different thoughts. Why don't we come together and be united in our diversity? So we have College of Medicine, College of Pharmacy, College of Nursing, Humanities, Divinity. Why? Because these are different thoughts. And people have different ideas. So once we have a school or a system that brings all these things together, then we can be very comprehensive in our learning. So you have to be challenged. I mean, if you write a dissertation, if you're a PhD student graduating, you do a dissertation, or maybe a master's, you do a thesis. Some group of people have to sit on it and kind of verify what you've written. Because you're saying that what you've put in the paper is true, and people are going to consume it. So you have to have some of your peers say that, no, that's not true. Well, that's false. Prove this to us. How do you come up with this? So if you're looking for a safe space on a university, I wonder how students who are pushing for safe, and now as we speak now, on a lot of campuses, a lot of students are pushing for their school authorities to bring safe spaces, physical safe spaces on campuses right now as we speak. So if a student is used to going to safe spaces, right? And let's say you're a master's or a PhD student. When you do your dissertation and you have your dissertation chair with 2 other faculty reviewing your work, I mean, they're going to roast you. You have to defend what you've put down. So if you're used to going to safe spaces, I guess that time will not be a safe place to be because you have to defend what you've written down. So safe spaces itself does not match the reality of life as we live it. We go to university because we want the rigor of academic learning. We want to be challenged. We want to make sure that what we are saying is true and we are willing to defend it. So when we come to real life, we're going to deal with these things. On your job, wherever you work, you may face people who have different ideas, and there's no safe space on the job. Unless some companies now who are liberal funded now want to create safe spaces on the job. You were saying earlier we have employee networks, right? And the idea of having a black employee network is not a bad idea of itself because we're talking about racism. This is a person doesn't choose to become black or white. So these are sacred issues. But when a person wants to be a multiple gender, that's not sacred. That's a choice. So we can mix apples and oranges. We can have safe space because we want people to be physically safe. So a black person is not brutalized. That's not an ideology. It's about physical safety. When we say that there's a certain idea that there are 2 genders and I disagree, and I must be protected from that ideology, there shouldn't be anything like that in this world. Because we are always going to have differences in opinions. Before I run through this list, I really want our hearers and parents who are listening to us to know some of the schools that provide safe spaces for our children, and at least to have an idea what a safe space really is. Before I go into this list, anyone with any other thoughts lingering on your mind before I hit this list?
Yeah, so I have a question.
Yeah.
So, as Christians, all of us on the podcast here are Christians. You know, we are charged with the mandate to be disciples and possess the nation and all of that good gospel stuff. So my question is, just now you gave the example of being black is not a choice, and it's a matter, can become a matter of physical security, but also just through my experiences, one who is of the LGBTQ community can also pose the same idea to you that my gender orientation or sexual orientation is also a threat to me. So what makes you being black okay to have a safe space, but me being whatever it is I am not okay to have a safe space? How would you go about having that conversation?
Yeah, when we talk of physical safety, right, everybody must be protected by law. If you look at the history of America, for instance, black students were being pulled. Some of them were, they use water hose and stuff like that. So that's not safety. We're talking about physical safety. So having, and we've even gone beyond these things, okay? The safe space idea was not necessarily originally about black students coming together. In our university campus, we have affirmative action and all of that. So that's different from a safe space.
Some of us.
We are saying that we want to give the minority a voice. And the minority should have a voice. That's fine. But here we're talking about ideologies. Being black is not an idea. Okay? It's not an idea. We're talking about ideas that the person is saying that, okay, we have multiple genders. But we're also saying that, no, we have binary genders. We have male and female. But you are saying we have multiple. So you have to prove that. That's an ideology you are bringing to us. So we are pushing the button to say, okay, how did you come up with this? And you're saying that, well, I'm not going to be able to explain. Or even if you explain, your reason does not hold water.
I was born this way.
Exactly. So then because I cannot explain, or somebody asks you, what is a woman? And you say a woman is anybody who identifies as a woman. You've not explained the point.
Lost.
Exactly. So we keep pushing you, and they say, well, your ideas are oppressing me. So I need a safe space. This is an idea. So we're talking purposely about ideas. When it comes to ideas, there's nothing like safety. When it comes to physical harm, yes, if there is a campus where people are brutalizing gay people, then I think that's wrong. They should be protected in terms of their physical safety. But when it comes to ideology, there's nothing like that. We must roast each other's idea until the best idea stands. That's how we determine what is true. So that's what we're talking about here. Schools and I'm mentioning these schools because some of us hearing us may have brothers, sisters, family members in some of these schools, right? And some Christian leaders even listening to us may have members in some of these schools, and they have no clue that there are safe spaces in these places, or these schools affirm some of these ideologies. University of Maryland is one. I know a lot of people close to me around me that go to University of Maryland. They have a physical safe space on campus that students could go to. I think one of you made a mention of somebody invited to campus and the person was canceled.
Yes.
Rutgers. If I remember correctly, I think that is Condoleezza Rice. I don't know the year.
That's one example.
But I know Condoleezza Rice at a certain point was canceled because she's a conservative. Mm-hmm. And so the ideas you have, for example, one of the things I hope to do on this podcast is to go to university campuses, right? With what I'm calling real answers, where I'll do keynote speaking engagements and I'll open the floor for proper Q&A. Because it's a university campus, ideas must be roasted. So if I come and share some certain ideology and you disagree, we have to have that space. That's the best place for this. Mm-hmm. So you have the microphone, you kind of counter what I've said, and I kind of explain what I've said, and everybody will know who is telling the truth. So now, I can be canceled. If I go to any university, right, that is, let's say I go to UC Berkeley in California, very liberal school. If we have people there who know me, they've invited me to go do a speaking engagement, and I go, the student there could hear about me and say, no, we know this guy coming. We know where he's coming from, what he believes. Okay, he can come here.
Disinvitation.
Exactly. So then they begin to disinvite you. Even if we've made payments, we've made some flyers, we've sent everything out, it's confirmed. Now we have to go through some kind of financial loss. And that is the America we have. Because my ideas would be oppressive to students at UC Berkeley. But I thought the students have come there to gain knowledge. So they should be able to engage with different forms of ideas. So Claremont colleges in California have safe spaces. JMU, James Madison in Virginia. I once wanted to go to that school. Has safe spaces. University of San Diego, California. American University in DC has safe spaces. Loyola in Illinois, Chicago has safe spaces. Kansas State University, Manhattan, Kansas has safe spaces. Kent State, Ohio has safe spaces. West Virginia University, Morgantown, West Virginia. Suffolk University in Boston, Massachusetts has safe spaces. University of Tampa, Florida has safe space. Cleveland State University in Ohio. Georgetown University has, a whole bunch of schools. I wouldn't be surprised Rutgers has a safe space.
Oh yeah, Rutgers does.
How about your school? Do you know?
I am completely unaware. I'm not gonna lie.
Go and look for it. It's probably somewhere. So it's like if mini churches without divine power, people can go and then find. Let's say I went to a campus, right, and I spoke on homosexuality, and the students who came there felt offended. They have to go to the safe space. So there will be an announcement going on saying that anybody who was offended by this speaker's teachings on homosexuality, please come to the safe space. And when you go there, you have people hugging you, embracing you, consoling you, because some ideas have beaten your intellectual capacity. You can't handle it. So we have to now, make you feel cozy and all of that. But when you come to the real world, you're not going to get a safe space. The world is rough, very rough. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggy off your very last comment. You said when you come to the real world, I believe that college is already the real world.
It is.
So
except that people are now trying to turn it into an unreal world.
Yeah, it's really just a breeding ground. So we need to weaponize ourselves early.
Yep. Okay. All too soon, we're bringing our conversation to a close. I want to pick your closing thoughts on safe spaces and the impact that it will have on our learning. And who wants to go first? Any thoughts as we wrap up our discussion on safe spaces? I believe that it's an attack on freedom of speech. Okay, because I want to protect myself. I can't stand your idea. You have the liberty to speak, but I can't stand it. So I'm going to go into hibernation. I'm going to hide. I think if we go this way, it's not going to be good. Anybody else?
I think it's more so one-sided opinion, and the opposing party doesn't have the opportunity to also express themselves. So I do agree too. It is an attack on freedom of speech, and I think if we are going to say that these safe spaces are for one side, then that's unfair to the person that also wants to express themselves by just saying the truth, or even also opening up to their own opinion as to why they think they are right in the opinion that they are presenting. So yes, it's not just one-sided, but each person, each party needs that same opportunity to also have a safe space to say the truth. So yeah.
Wonderful. Anybody else?
I'm thinking through my thoughts. But I'll say this. I think most of this conversation has been done through the context of like the Western perspective. I would be quite interested to see, what is happening in other universities, perhaps in China and Turkey, Ghana.
I can tell you would not have a safe space in China. It's a communist society.
Yeah. But I wonder what the university experience is like and what students from that end might think on this particular conversation. But I think when it comes to safe spaces, I think it's very important to challenge your mind. And as someone who lives in the West, for those that live in the West, think on what does freedom of speech mean to you? It is an amendment that has been given to all American citizens. And so if an institution or an organization is able to come for one idea, in this season of time, down the line, perhaps an idea that you hold dear and true to you might be challenged down the road. And so I think to uphold the concept of freedom of speech, we must be a society that is open, even when it goes against our ideas. I have people that I know that don't hold the same Christian values and ideologies that I hold. But that doesn't mean that I disregard them as a human being or as a person of intelligence. I'm able to navigate conversations and ideas without being offended. And so I think you have a healthy state of mind if you're able to get to that point. And I think when it comes to safe spaces, this is what this conversation is about. Again, it's not about the physical, but more so the ideology behind it.
Awesome stuff.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that I believe safe spaces promote the intolerance of opposing viewpoints, and that, in a sense, limits how humans are able to coincide with each other because everyone is from a different perspective all around. But overall, the Bible does say that lack of knowledge, my people perish. So I believe that as Americans and as, inhabitants of the Western Hemisphere, we, in a certain sense, are blessed to have the ability to speak freely and see so many differing viewpoints, because everywhere else in the world, people are kind of pushed in one direction and one way. And even if you want to look at exposure to the Bible, there are a lot of people in the world who don't know about the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ or don't have access to a Bible or things like that because of the culture and society that they live in. So with what we have access to today, the same way when we speak, we want voices to be heard, we also need to have the ability to humble ourselves and listen to those who are speaking to us as well. Even if we do not agree with everything that's being said, sometimes there is at least one thing that we can get from what is being said to apply to our own wisdom and knowledge, because at the end of the day, wisdom and knowledge do come from experience as well as God, but it also does come from our own experiences. And if we are limiting our experiences by wrapping ourselves in bubbles, then how can we grow?
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. For students who are of Christian background, who hold Christian principles and teachings, if you go to university campuses, you may not be welcome in a safe space because your ideas are oppressive. Matthew 5:10 to 12 says that blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So we have come to the era of persecution. It's happening on our university campuses where you can be cancelled for going to share a certain idea, or students who are Christians may not be welcome in certain spaces in the university campuses because of what they stand for. But let's still pursue righteousness even if we are being persecuted. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Unsettled podcast. Kindly remember to join us next time, and then also to subscribe and follow us on social media. This podcast is available on all platforms, on YouTube and on our website, liveunsettled.org. Until next time, God bless you.